It was the morning of May 8th, 1945, VE Day, the moment the world exhaled after 6 years of unimaginable destruction. Across Europe, bells rang, crowds cheered, and flags unfurled in the wind. But far from the celebrations, another scene unfolded in cold, dimly lit buildings scattered across Germany. Here, in hidden laboratories and reinforced bunkers, the men who had fueled Hitler's scientific ambitions were facing the consequences of their creations. For years, these scientists had worked under the banner of the Reich, some willingly, others under pressure, and many in the gray, morally twisted space in between. They designed rockets capable of reaching the edge of space, engines for weapons that could devastate cities, and technologies no other nation had dared to imagine. Their inventions had changed the course of the war and scarred history. Now the war was over. The Reich had collapsed. Hitler was dead. And on May 8th, the Allied powers, America, Britain, France, and the Soviet Union, were closing in, not just on Germany, but on its scientific elite. Inside confiscated labs, chalkboards remained covered with equations that once promised the future of warfare. Disassembled rocket parts lay scattered like broken relics of a dark industrial dream. The scientists who had built them, Werner von Braun, Walter Dornberger, Arthur Rudolph, and many more, waited in a state of uncertainty. They knew their work had bought them a strange kind of power, but it had also chained them to the crimes of a regime that no longer existed. Some hoped for rescue. Some feared execution. And others, for the first time, wondered what their inventions had truly unleashed upon the world. May 8th, 1945, was not simply the day Germany surrendered. It was the day its scientists realized that history was coming to collect its debt. In the years leading up to VE Day, German scientific institutions had become engines of unprecedented innovation. From aerodynamics to chemistry, from rocketry to atomic research, they pushed boundaries with a mixture of brilliance, ambition, and moral blindness. Many of these scientists had watched their work transform Germany into what they believed was a technologically unstoppable war machine. The V-2 rocket, humanity's first long-range ballistic missile, had soared over the English Channel and struck London with supersonic force. Jet aircraft, guided weapons, and experimental engines promised even more devastating possibilities. To outsiders, these breakthroughs seemed like triumphs of genius. But within Germany's scientific community, a different truth simmered. Research was controlled by fear, politics, and the looming shadow of the SS. Many projects were built on forced labor, hidden underground in factories where thousands suffered and died to assemble machines of war. As the Reich crumbled, the scientists tried to distance themselves from the suffering their inventions had caused. They told themselves that they had only been engineers, only mathematicians, only physicists solving problems. But the world would soon decide whether they were innovators or accomplices. May 8th marked the moment when the shielding walls of the Reich fell away. The architects of its most advanced weapons now stood exposed before the judgment of nations. Some were terrified, others were defiant, and a few still clung to the belief that science existed beyond morality. But the ruins around them suggested otherwise. As German cities lay in ruins, the Allies raced toward a different kind of prize: knowledge. British intelligence wanted ballistic missile expertise. American investigators searched for aerodynamic research, chemical specialists, and guidance engineers. And Soviet units, advancing from the east, moved with ruthless precision to capture entire research teams and transport them back to Moscow. It wasn't just competition, it was desperation. The world understood that the next war, if it ever came, would be fought with the innovations born in these German laboratories. Whoever controlled this knowledge would shape the balance of global power for decades. This scramble became one of the greatest intelligence operations of the 20th century. American teams combed through research sites, seizing documents by the truckload. British operatives intercepted scientists on the move. Soviet officers stormed underground facilities, confiscating machines and rounding up personnel. By the time May 8 arrived, the Allies knew exactly who these scientists were. They knew what they had built, how they had built it, and what they could build next. For the German scientists, the realization was chilling. Their inventions had made them indispensable, but they had also made them targets. And now each side wanted the same thing, to control the future by capturing the minds that had once armed the Reich. In the days before Germany's surrender, the most influential rocket scientists made a life or death decision. Led by Wernher von Braun, they would surrender, not to the Soviets, who were closest, but to the Americans. The scientists destroyed documents, buried components, and fled into the mountains of Bavaria. They hoped the U.S. Army would find them first. To von Braun, the Soviet alternative meant imprisonment or worse. To others, it meant the end of any chance to continue their work. On May 2nd, the American 44th Infantry Division began gathering these scientists and placing them under protective custody. By May 8th, the entire operation was complete. The men who had once served the Reich now sat in American interrogation rooms, answering questions about propulsion systems, guidance controls, and production lights. They expected punishment. Many braced for war crimes trials. But what they did not expect was the option the Americans were about to place before them. Work for the United States? Or watch their knowledge vanish into Soviet hands. For the first time, these scientists realized that their future might not be defined solely by their past. But the cost of that future would stir controversy for generations. With the war over, Allied investigators faced a difficult question. How do you judge scientists whose work enabled atrocities, but whose knowledge could reshape the world? Some German scientists insisted they had simply followed orders. Others claimed they were apolitical, focused only on mathematics and experimentation. But testimonies from survivors of the Mittelbau-Dora labor camps painted a darker picture. Thousands had died building the V-2 rockets. The scientists knew or chose not to know the suffering their work depended on. On May 8th, interrogations grew intense. Allied war crimes officers questioned engineers about forced labor, human experimentation, and their connections to the SS. Many attempted to shift the blame. Others downplayed their roles. A few broke down and confessed. This was the day morality collided with military necessity. Some investigators wanted trials. Others argued for forgiveness in exchange for cooperation. Governments debated behind closed doors. What mattered more, justice for the dead, or the scientific advantage that might prevent another war? The world had no easy answer. And for the German scientists caught in the middle, May 8th was the day they learned that the consequences of their creation went far beyond equations on a chalkboard. As the celebrations of VE Day echoed across the world, a secret American program moved quietly into motion. Operation Paperclip. Its purpose was simple: recruit German scientists to work for the United States before the Soviet Union could capture them. Their rocket expertise could launch a new era of military power. Their aerodynamic research could revolutionize aviation. And their engineering methods could give America a strategic edge. But it came with a cost. Many of the scientists had ties to the Nazi regime. Some had held ranks in the SS. Files were sanitized. Records were altered. Ethical lines were crossed in the shadows of geopolitical necessity. On May 8th, the first groups of scientists were moved from Germany to temporary sites in France and then to the United States. They were told they would work under supervision. But in truth, their new employers needed them more than they wished to admit. The world would later debate whether Operation Paperclip was a triumph of intelligence or a compromise of principles. But on that day, for the scientists boarding American planes, One thing was clear. Their war was over. Their second life was about to begin. While the Americans launched Operation Paperclip, the Soviet Union executed its own operation, one far more aggressive. Soviet intelligence teams swept through eastern Germany, seizing laboratories, dismantling factories, and capturing entire families of scientists. Trains left the region loaded not just with machinery, but with the minds that had built it. These scientists were taken deep into the Soviet Union, where they were given housing, equipment, and strict supervision. They rebuilt their laboratories under new flags, serving a new master. Many believed they would never return home. For the Soviets, this wasn't just about rockets. It was about proving that the future belonged to them. May 8 marked the dividing line between two global powers, both armed with German knowledge, and as the Cold War emerged from the ashes of World War II, it became clear that the seeds of that conflict were planted in the frantic scramble for the minds of defeated Germany. May 8th, 1945, did not only end a war, it redrew the map of global science. The German scientists who once worked for Hitler would eventually launch America's first satellites, develop the technology that carried humans to the moon, and help build the missiles that defined Cold War strategy. Their fingerprints are on every chapter of modern aerospace, yet their legacy is forever shadowed by the suffering that enabled their work. Their brilliance came with a moral cost, one the world continues to debate. For some, these scientists were visionaries trapped in a nightmare. For others, they were opportunists who allowed ambition to override their humanity. But history leaves little doubt. Their creations shaped the world in ways no one could have predicted. As Europe celebrated peace on May 8th, these men faced a different destiny, one forged by equations, by engines, and by decisions made in the darkest years of human history. The war was over, but the consequences of their creation were only beginning.